Good morning, everyone. Today we will see the topic that is angina pectoris, and we will see the different types of drugs that are used for treatment of angina. Now, the basic question will arise: what is angina, or what does angina mean? So, angina is a syndrome. That means it is a collection of symptoms where there is pain, and it is basically a pain syndrome where there is imbalance between the oxygen demand by the heart and the supply that is reaching to the heart. So we will see in detail what is angina and the drugs. So angina pectoris, it is mostly the pain, that is chest pain due to the ischemia of cardiac muscles, that is heart muscles, and what is seen, there is either spasm or obstruction of the coronary arteries. So coronary arteries are the main arteries which supply the blood to the heart, myocardium and the muscles. So there is either obstruction or spasm or constriction of the coronary arteries. These are the main vessels. So the second may be the myocardial ischemia. Then there is reduced oxygen supply because of the reduced blood supply through the arteries. So reduced blood supply will lead to decreased oxygen supply to the myocardium, and this increase in demand of oxygen will lead to the chest pain, and this chest pain with other symptoms we call it as angina pectoris. Now why does this pain arise? So the pain basically is because the metabolites that are getting accumulated in the myocardium are responsible for causing pain. So pain can be because of the increase in oxygen demand also. So now in this diagram you can see that what is the main basic pathology in angina pectoris. So basically the oxygen supply that is there to the myocardium or the cardiac muscle should be able to cope up with the demand, that is the oxygen demand of the heart muscles. Now what happens in angina, different types of angina are there that we will see in detail, but now see, when there is a healthy heart, so on the left side you can see that when there is healthy heart, the oxygen supply is able to meet the oxygen demand. But when there is a coronary artery disease in the heart, then the oxygen supply which is there is not able to meet the oxygen demand, and this gives rise to the vicious cycle or the vicious circle of the angina pectoris, that is further decrease in the oxygen demand will cause the pain and other symptoms. So what is ischemic heart disease? There is either coronary thrombosis or transient coronary ischemia. So in coronary thrombosis we have the myocardial infarction, and in transient, where there is transient means temporary, so there is angina pectoris when there is transient coronary ischemia. Now in angina pectoris there are different types, as I said already before, that either there is atherosclerosis and exertion, and secondly there can be acute vasospasm, that is constriction of the major vessels that are supplying blood to the heart. So atherosclerosis and exertion means what? Either there will be a atherosclerotic plaque that will occlude the lumen of the great vessels, and further because of the occlusion of the lumen, the narrowing of the lumen will lead to decreased blood supply to the distant muscles of the vessel that is supplying. So in that we have typical angina, that is stable angina and unstable angina, that is when the plaque ruptures and there is increase in aggregation of the platelets. So the size of the plaque will further increase and the narrowing will be increased. So that gives rise to the unstable angina. And in the next variant, that is the acute vasospasm, where there is acute vasoconstriction of the vessel, there occurs a variant angina. When there is classical fixed angina, that is because of the fixed stenosis of the vessel, and if there is thrombus, then the rupture of the thrombus can lead to the further attraction of the platelets. So that is unstable angina. And the next one is the vasospastic, that is the vasospasm occurs and we call it as Prinzmetal's angina. So there is a relationship between the supply and the demand. So weak relationship between the severity of the pain and the degree of oxygen supply is there, and there can be severe pain with minimal disruption of supply of oxygen, or sometimes no pain in severe cases also. So depending on the cause of the pain, there are different types of angina. See, stable angina. Now what is stable angina? So in stable angina we can say that it is a predictable one, and it is either provoked by the exercise, emotion or eating. The different acts can promote the or provoke the classical or stable type of angina. So next is the unstable angina. So what happens in unstable angina? So it is one of the unpredictable or variant type of angina, where the attacks occur even in rest or sleep also, and we cannot predict whether the attack is going to occur or not. So, and the other types are the microvascular and the Prinzmetal's, that is a vasospastic angina. Now moving towards the first one, that is the stable angina. Also we call it as a effort angina. Effort angina means provoked by the efforts taken by the person having the angina, that is either by exercise or increased oxygen demand because of the emotional feelings, and the attack subsides when the energy demand is withdrawn, that is when the demand of oxygen is decreased, the attack subsides by itself. So there is discomfort, and it is precipitated by any of the activities as mentioned above. There is minimal or no symptoms at all when the person is at rest, but increases when the oxygen demand is increased. So what happens in this angina? That is severe atherosclerotic plaque is there within the vessels. Now first thing is you keep in mind that the major vessels supplying the heart are the coronary arteries, and the coronary arteries then send the deep infiltrating branches to supply the deeper muscles of the heart like myocardium and the other tissues. So the main pathology lies between these coronary arteries and the other vessels that supply the blood to the cardiac tissue. And one more important thing related to the cardiac vessel is that the blood supply to the myocardium is only during the diastole, not during the systole, because these are the perforating branches, and when in systole heart muscles contract, the blood supply is also halted for some time. But during the diastole, when the heart relaxes, at that time the blood flow is there to the deeper tissues of the heart. Now in stable angina, what happens? There is atherosclerotic plaque. So because of this plaque, the arteries or the main branches of the arteries that supply to the deeper tissues are obstructed, that is the lumen of these vessels is narrowed. Then when there is obstruction, the increase in oxygen demand because of any of the activity of the person is not met, that is because the blood flow that continues through the lumen is less because of the narrowing of the lumen. So whenever there is increase in demand, the body cannot meet the demand of the oxygen because of the narrow lumen, because the amount of blood that flows through the vessel remains the same even if the demand is increased, because there is obstruction. Now, and despite of the local factors that are acting on the vessels, local factors means the factors that are released from the vessel walls to dilate the vessel so that the flow can be increased to the part where there is increased demand, but these factors also do not work because of the angina and the obstruction, and thus the demand is not met and the pain is felt because of the ischemia. So next is the unstable angina. So what happens in unstable angina? We already know that it occurs at rest, so it is unpredictable one. It is severe and often it is acute in onset. So pain increases every time as the attacks are coming. So what happens here? The recurrent localized vasospasm is also there along with the obstruction. So there is decrease in the supply, that is superimposed on atherosclerotic plaque. There is along with that coronary vasospasm also. The Prinzmetal's angina is the variant from angina which the normal coronary vessels are there, that is minimum atherosclerosis is there, that is minimum narrowing of the lumen is there because of plaque, but the main pathology is the constriction, vasospasm occurs, that is the vessel itself gets constricted because of unknown pathology, and because of the constriction the blood flow is again decreased and hence the oxygen demand is not met. So this is type of Prinzmetal's angina. So what are the symptoms which we see in angina? So basic is the ischemia that occurs because of the decreased blood supply, and ischemia further leads to decreased oxygen supply, and this ischemia is one which leads to the pain. So either increased oxygen demand is there or decreased supply is there. Increased oxygen demand will be because of the activities like exercise or other activities, and decreased supply will be because of the obstruction. So inadequate blood supply and decreased oxygen supply are directly related to the blocked or the narrowed vessels. So these are the pathological features which will lead to the symptoms that we see in angina. Also there occurs inadequacy in function of the left ventricle. Why? Because of ischemia only, and because of the inadequacy of the function of left ventricle of the heart, it will be unable to pump out the amount of blood that is required. So more amount of blood will then get accumulated into the left ventricle, and it will lead to increase in pressure in the left ventricle. Now as I have already told that the blood supply is only during diastole, and further this accumulation of blood will again lead to increase in pressure. So increase in pressure and also the supply is only during diastole, so the blood flow again is decreased further, and this will lead to subendocardial crunch, because subendocardial crunch means was the blood flow to the subendocardial region does not take place, and that occurs during diastole, and again for ischemia increases in the subendocardial region, and because of this ischemia in the subendocardial region, it leads to the acute but reversible ventricular failure, and because of this reversible and acute ventricular failure there occurs pain, but this can be relieved, as we have already discussed that in stable angina the pain is relieved by taking rest and decreasing the cardiac workload. So depending upon the pathology that we have seen, now we will see what are the goals for treatment of the angina. Firstly, there is increased oxygen demand because of increased cardiac work, so try to decrease the cardiac work. Next, inhibit the platelet aggregation, as platelet aggregation will lead to increase in size of the clot or the atherosclerotic plaque, and it will again further decrease the lumen of the vessel. So decrease cardiac work, then inhibit the platelet aggregation, then prevent the vasospasm, that is to prevent the vasoconstriction or the narrowing of the lumen of the vessel. So try to dilate the coronaries, and then stabilize the plaque, so that if why to stabilize the plaque? So if the plaque ruptures, the ruptured plaque will be a raw area where the new platelets will try and get aggregate and will try to increase the size of plaque. Now see, when there is increased oxygen demand, there is increased heart rate, increased contractility, and increased preload, increased afterload. So decreased supply will be because of either decreased coronary flow, then decreased regional myocardial blood flow. So when there is increased oxygen demand, we give beta blockers or calcium channel blockers. So these will by their mechanism of action, they will try to reduce the heart rate and the contractility. So but obviously the workload will be decreased and the oxygen demand will be reduced. The other drugs like nitrates or calcium channel blockers will try to reduce the preload and the afterload by dilating the vessels, that is arteries and the veins. Now when there is decreased coronary blood flow and decreased regional myocardial flow, which will lead to decreased oxygen supply, in such cases we can use nitrates or calcium channel blockers that will try to dilate the vessels and increase the blood flow to the required area. Now the first drug that we will see is the organic nitrates. So what are organic nitrates? These are prodrugs which will try to release the nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the naturally occurring substance, or we can say that is responsible for dilating the vessels. So because of the release of nitric oxide, intracellular cyclic GMP will increase, and because of this there will be dephosphorylation of myosin light chain kinase, and this will cause relaxation of the smooth muscles, and relaxation of smooth muscles of the vessels will lead to dilatation of the vessels. So relaxation of vascular smooth muscles will lead to vasodilatation, and then others what will be seen, that is nitric oxide mediated guanylyl cyclase, it will inhibit the platelet aggregation also. So firstly there will be vasodilatation, and secondly there will be inhibition of platelet aggregation, and other muscles like smooth muscles of bronchi and GIT will be also relaxed. So endogenous nitric oxide pathways, that is we obtain the nitric oxide from the L-arginine, and it has different functions. One is neurotransmission or vasomotor effect or immunomodulation. So what are the effects of nitric oxide on different systems? So on cardiovascular system we have already seen that it is responsible for vasodilatation, and that is at low concentrations it will preferably dilate the veins. And vasodilatation, what will it do? It will try to dilate the veins, so peripheral pooling of blood will be there, but obviously the blood that returns to the heart, that is venous return, will be decreased, and preload will be decreased. Decrease in preload will itself decrease the cardiac workload. So vasodilatation decreases venous return to heart, and venous return decreases, that's why the chamber size, that is the left ventricular chamber size will be decreased, and the end diastolic pressure on the ventricles will release, and the blood flow that occurs during the diastole will increase. Also there will be systemic vascular resistance that is offered by the vessels will be decreased. Systemic blood pressure also falls, but slightly. And one more drawback will be that it will cause dilatation of meningeal vessels, and we can say the side effect that is seen with nitrates is because of this, that is the meningeal vessels will dilate and it will cause the headache. See, the pathology which I have already explained, that because of the atherosclerotic plaque there will be decrease in blood supply through that vessel, and even if the other vessels, that is the vessels distal to the plaque, if they are dilated, then also it will have no effect, because the initial blood that is coming from the plaque area is already less, and even though the collaterals are there, that will not be sufficient to supply the blood to the ischemic area in cases of coronary artery disease. Now when we give nitrates, what nitrates will do? Nitrates will try to dilate the vessels. So the collaterals that were there, they will try to dilate the collaterals, not the major vessels. So the blood flow, even it is less from the plaque area, the collaterals in the normal areas will be dilated, and they will give the blood to the affected area. So the blood flow to the ischemic area is naturally increased because of nitrates. Now what happens to the cardiovascular system we have already seen. Now what is seen, heart rate is unchanged or may increase slightly, or there can be reflex tachycardia also when we give nitrates. Secondly, the cardiac output is slightly reduced because there is dilatation of vessels. Then what happens, even low dose can cause dilatation of arterioles of face and neck, so it will lead to flushing. If there is at low doses, we have seen that it has caused the venodilatation, but if at higher doses, it can cause a fall in BP because it will lead to dilatation of arteries also, and due to venous pooling and decreased arterial resistance, systemically we can see that reduced systemic blood pressure. Now what is seen other things, that is reflex tachycardia and peripheral arterial constriction occurs, which causes restoration of the systemic BP. So the major effect of the BP is nullified, that is even if there is dilatation of arteries or veins, the fall in BP is again cooped up by the reflex tachycardia that occurs with the nitrates. The coronary blood flow may initially increase, then subsequently due to decreased BP, that is fall in BP may decrease, and nitrates have dilating effect on large coronary vessels. Okay, that is the larger vessels supplying the heart are dilated by nitrates, and also secondly there is increased collateral flow in the ischemic areas. Nitrates, what they do, they try to normalize the blood flow to the subendocardial region, that is we have seen that subendocardial crunch that was occurring because of the decreased blood flow by the perforating vessels will be normalized because of redistribution of blood, that is redistribution occurs because of dilatation of collaterals. Collaterals are the vessels other than the major coronary vessels. And one more thing about nitrates is that they dilate the stenosis and reduce vascular resistance even in ischemic areas also. So this is the plus point of nitrates. Reduction in myocardial oxygen consumption is caused by, now what we have seen, that firstly because of its venodilatory effect there will be peripheral pooling of blood and reduced preload. Secondly, there will be arteriolar dilatation, so it will lead to reduction in afterload. And thirdly, what you can see is decrease in end diastolic volume is seen because of reduced preload, and this reduced diastolic volume will lead to decreased left ventricular filling pressure, and further it will lead to decreased oxygen consumption. So in platelets increases cyclic GMP, so there will be inhibition of aggregation of platelets, so no increase in size of plaque. Next is the strongest factor for nitrate effect is the peripheral pooling because of venodilatation. So nitrates infused into coronary arteries, it will have no effect. Then if they are given sublingually, they produce the effect, and venous phlebotomy mimics the effects of nitrates. Now pharmacokinetics. Orally they are ineffective because of high first path metabolism, that's why sublingual is the fastest acting route. Then for nitrates, then administered sublingually to avoid these first pass metabolism. Then tolerance also develops in case of nitrates, so repeated doses lead to tolerance, and that's why we need to space the doses, that is keep some duration between the doses, 2 doses of the nitrates to avoid the tolerance. So reasons for tolerance, what are there? That is either decreased capacity of vascular smooth muscles to convert the nitrate, that is nitrates, to nitric oxide, and called true vascular tolerance. So whatever nitrates we give through the tablets, so this is not converted to NO by the smooth muscles of vessels, and this will lead to tolerance. Secondly, pseudo tolerance is because of other reasons. What are the adverse effects that we see because of nitrates? First, headache, that we have already discussed, that because of the dilatation of meningeal vessels there will be severe headache, and this will disappear if the treatment is discontinued or if we decrease the dose of the nitrates. Second ADR is that transient episodes of dizziness, weakness, pallor, etc. all are because of postural hypotension, that is because of dilatation of vessels, which will lead to fall in blood pressure. Next is rash, and then if along with nitrates we give phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitors, they can produce severe hypotension, because both will cause the fall in BP. So uses, we can use nitrates in angina pectoris and congestive heart failure and myocardial infarction. So administration of nitrates either sublingually or orally when for prophylaxis, but we need to give the higher doses due to high first pass metabolism. We can use isosorbate dinitrate every 4 hourly or mononitrate either once or twice daily. We can use cutaneous also by ointment, which is applied to a 2.5 to 5 centimeter patch of skin. Transdermal nitroglycerin disc is impregnated with nitroglycerin polymer, and absorption occurs and 24-hour plasma nitrate concentrations are maintained, but the onset is slow in this case as compared to other routes, and the peak concentration is reached after 1 to 2 hours. So it is just the prophylactic one, not a treatment for acute attack. They will interrupt the therapy for at least 8 hours a day for the reason to avoid the tolerance. So other anti-anginal drugs are, firstly we have seen nitrates, and we have seen the uses also, that is congestive heart failure, left ventricular failure or myocardial infarction or cyanide poisoning also. Now the next class of drug is the calcium antagonist or calcium channel blockers also. Now how do they act? Calcium channel blockers will prevent the entry of calcium, that is calcium influx is decreased. Now there is negative and iono and chronotropic effect because of decreased calcium entry, because calcium is responsible for the constriction and contraction of the muscles. So because of less calcium there will be vasodilatation, therefore there will be peripheral vasodilatation. So used in cases of variant angina where there is spasm of vessels to avoid the spasm, and in cases of exertional angina, unstable angina, myocardial infarction, hypertension and antiarrhythmic drug also. Other class is the beta blockers. Now the pathology, we have seen that there is either reflex tachycardia also, and because of nitrates, so we can combine these with nitrates also, and there is also need to decrease the cardiac workload in angina. So beta blockers here will be helpful. How? They will reduce the severity and frequency of exertional angina, and because of beta blocker activity it will cause the slowing down of the heart. So beta blockers may worsen vasospastic angina because we don't want the further spasm of the vessels, so they are contraindicated in vasospastic angina. This will reduce the oxygen demand. How? By reducing the cardiac work, as they have negative iono and chronotropic effect like that of calcium channel blockers, and also they will try to decrease the blood pressure even during exercise and rest also. The other drug is ranolazine. So what is ranolazine? It is a reserve agent for the treatment of chronic or resistant angina. So it inhibits the late sodium currents in myocardium. So indirectly it inhibits the calcium entry also through the channel, that is sodium calcium exchanger. So as the sodium entry is inhibited, along with that calcium entry is also inhibited. So it will cause what? It will prevent the overload of calcium that causes the cardiac ischemia. So because of this the cardiac contractility is decreased, so workload is decreased and further oxygen demand is also reduced. So no change in heart rate or BP is seen like other drugs like beta blockers which have the role in reducing the heart rate and blood pressure also, or calcium channel blockers. And also what ranolazine does, it prolongs the QT interval. So one more important thing is that it is contraindicated with drugs that are causing the increase in the QT interval. Other important point related to ranolazine is that because of decreased calcium in myocardium, the contractility decreases, and so this is also a cardioprotective function of ranolazine. One more drug was there, that is dipyridamole, which has a powerful coronary dilator effect. So it will cause increase in total coronary flow by preventing the uptake and degradation of adenosine. Other drug is the nicorandil. So what does nicorandil do? It is a vasodilatory drug used to treat the angina pectoris. It has dual properties of nitrates and ATP sensitive potassium channel opener. So the drugs like pyridamole, which we were discussing in previous slide, is that it is the one which causes degradation of adenosine. So what is this adenosine? Adenosine is a local mediator that is involved in autoregulation of coronary flow. That is, it is responsible for regulation of the coronary flow in response to ischemia. So it will cause the dilatation of resistant vessels. It will also cause what? Abolish the autoregulation. There will be no effect on longer conducting coronary vessels. So what pyridamole do? It increases total coronary flow by preventing the uptake and degradation of adenosine. So it will dilate the resistance vessels in non-ischemic area also. That is the drawback. That is, it will cause the diversion of the blood flow to the non-ischemic area also, and this is called the coronary steal phenomenon. So in case of nicorandil, nitrates action dilates the large coronary arteries at low plasma concentration, and if it is a higher concentration, it will reduce the coronary artery resistance, which is associated with opening of ATP sensitive potassium channels. Nicorandil has a cardioprotective effect, which appears to be due to activation of ATP sensitive potassium channels. So basically it is related to the potassium channels, and because of this, the areas which we note are the flushing, palpitation, headache or ulcers, nausea, vomiting. The other anti-anginal drugs are trimetazidine. So what is trimetazidine? It is a drug which has no effect on oxygen consumption, but how does it act? The frequency is reduced, the frequency of anginal attack is reduced, and it will increase the exercise tolerance also. But how? It improves the cellular tolerance to ischemia by modifying the myocardial metabolism, that is the metabolism of the muscles of the myocardium, that is muscles of the heart, is modified in such a way that the cells or the muscles become tolerant to the ischemia, that is they can tolerate the ischemia that is seen. So it is an anti-ischemic agent which will improve the glucose utilization by inhibition of fatty acid metabolism, which requires more energy and more oxygen consumption. Now in the last slide, what I will like to discuss is that there are different drugs which we have seen which can be used for treatment of angina, but among these different drugs, how can we combine the drugs that are already present with us? Because only using a single drug won't be efficient in certain cases. So we can combine beta blockers along with nitrates. How? See, beta blockers how will be they helpful? The reflex tachycardia that was seen with nitrates will be counteracted by the beta blockers, and nitrates counteract the tendency of beta blockers to dilate the ventricles. Also nitrates will counteract the tendency of beta blockers to decrease the total coronary flow. So in this way, the beta blockers and nitrates can be combined. Secondly, what we can combine is the dihydropyridines along with beta blockers. So how are they helpful? When there is coronary vasospasm, in such cases we cannot give verapamil or diltiazem because they have a depressant effect on SA node and AV node. So they will try to build up the beta blocker effect. So hence we only combine dihydropyridines with beta blockers. The next combination which we can give is the nitrates along with calcium channel blockers. So how are they helpful for each other? The nitrates will decrease the preload and calcium channel will decrease the afterload. So both will in toto decrease the cardiac work and improve the coronary perfusion. But the combination useful in vasospastic angina when the beta blockers are contraindicated. And lastly, three combinations we have seen, that beta blockers with nitrates, dihydropyridine with beta blockers, then nitrates with calcium channel blockers, and lastly all the three classes, that is beta blockers, nitrates or calcium channel blockers can be combined. How? The beta blockers will decrease the cardiac workload by acting on the that is causing bradycardia. Nextly, nitrates will decrease preload and calcium channels will decrease the afterload and increase the coronary flow also. So in this way all the three can also be combined. So this was in short the pathological features and the symptoms of angina along with the different types of drugs, how they act at the different levels of pathology of angina and how they are helpful and how different classes can be combined. So thank you.